Hi, Rebecca. It's great to meet you. And thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me. Before we jump in, I'd love to hear a bit about yourself and then how you discovered Carnivore and how did it all started for you.
Well, hi, Joseph. Thanks very much for inviting me on your channel. It's a pleasure to be here. So, an introduction. How did I find Carnivore? Well, my story starts back in 2016 when I was 36. I'm 45 now, so nearly 10 years ago, when I suddenly got ill with multiple sclerosis. And this was at a time in my life when I was living in the city and I was a career girl. I was actually finishing a PhD, so I'm in, full health in my prime. And so it was a terrible shock. And I spent a few years really very ill, disabled by my symptoms, and really sort of hopeless and wondering what future I could possibly have now. And it was during that time that I started to take control of my own health in small ways. I came off medication, for example, because that was actually causing me more difficulties. And I realized that my environment was having an impact on my symptoms. So I decided to leave the city environment and move to the country. And I moved to Spain because it's sunnier and where I could live on a mountainside and I could live off grid, and that would be cheaper and healthier for me. So that's what I did. And it was while I was on the mountainside that I discovered the carnivore diet. I discovered it on YouTube, but I decided to give it a go because while living in Spain, it was actually a quite natural diet to go for because Spain is quite meat friendly. It's, if you try to follow a vegan diet, you'll have more trouble in Spain. But I live in a farming area in northern Spain, and it just seemed to make sense. I thought, well, okay, I saw people on YouTube looked very, very healthy on the diet. I didn't think it was going to have any impact on my multiple sclerosis because I'd tried diets before that really just gave me a psychological element of control rather than a physical change. So I just thought it was perhaps something I could do for myself now that I was entering my 40s and, maybe I'd lose a little bit of weight because I had a very carbohydrate heavy diet and I was getting quite bloated, because of that. So I just thought, I'll just give it a go. And I couldn't have been more shocked in a good way when within a month I felt my core strength returning and my memory returning. So physical and cognitive strength returning in a way which was indisputable, visible to others and consistent. And that was about 2.5 years ago now. And I have not had symptoms of multiple sclerosis since. And on top of that, I've had a brain scan which appeared to show no active lesions. So at the moment, it doesn't feel like I have multiple sclerosis at all. And yeah, that's basically been my journey in a nutshell.
That's awesome. I think, I've watched several videos from your channel and, I have a good idea, like what you've been through with you sharing your experience. I think it's really inspiring. I mean, reversing MS is already it's already incredible alone. And with your channel, like helping others, sharing your story, I find it to be very generous. You're not just healing yourself, you're also leading by example, giving hope to people who really need it. I also wanted to ask, what motivates you to, keep sharing your journey? Is it like helping others or, battle their MS, or is it the carnivore community? Are you frustrated with the current conventional protocol? Yeah.
All of those things, definitely. I mean, I started sharing my journey immediately. I already had the channel when I started the diet, but it was just sharing my life on the mountain. But it was in the same vein. It was sort of like, I know I'm doing something different here as somebody with a chronic illness. I would like to share that, in case it inspires anybody. And then, so it just made sense as soon as I started the diet to immediately start vlogging that, but I had no idea that it was going to have the effect that it did. So I was very happy to be able to share the good news as it unfolded. There was also the fact that I went through difficult times after I started the diet for personal relationships, because what I found was that because I had been so vulnerable and so alone, there were impacts on my personal life beyond the physical symptoms of the illness. PTSD, being vulnerable to toxic relationships, things like that. And so it was actually just an outlet for me to be able to help survive those things as they were happening. So there's that side of it. But I've moved away from I think my channel's become much more positive as I've moved into a more positive space. But yeah, I did go through a difficult year after I started the diet. And so the channel and the community was one supportive place where I could process my healing journey as it was happening and share it. But as you say, also, it's just this sense of distrust in the medical establishment, the pharmaceutical industry. And I feel very strongly that it's important to not to influence people to necessarily, come off medication or ignore their doctor's advice. I don't feel that I'm in a position to do that. However, I do think that we should have freedom of speech to share the positive results of other approaches, alternative approaches. I'm not necessarily saying other people have to do the things that I've done, but I think I'm fully entitled and to be able to share the positive results of the choices that I've made, and leave it to other people to decide, at least be exposed to that information should they wish to take it. But I do have a distrust of lots of institutions that are profit-based, usually, which is difficult to really open up about sometimes, because you can get into hot water on YouTube about those things. But I think it's enough just to share the ups and downs of my journey, and if people connect with that and relate to that and may feel inspired by that, then that's wonderful. And I think everybody's within their rights to do that, and we should all be encouraged to have open discussions about alternative approaches to chronic disease.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, this next question I think would be appropriate. This is coming from a fellow carnivore, and he wanted to ask, I'm sure you've mentioned this in one of your videos, that you continue seeing a doctor who disagrees with your approach. And I also, really respect that, because it seems like you're, raising awareness with the carnivore and how it can help with the MS. Do you feel like it's making a difference in spreading the awareness? Is your doctor pretty much a anti-carnivore, or has it affected the doctor's view at all?
That's a really interesting question. Thank you for that question, because it's been a process, actually, where at this point, if you'd have asked me that question a year ago, I'd have had a very different answer to the one I have now, which I think is in itself relevant, because it's quite clear that changing somebody's mind when they're actually an expert in that very field that you are claiming to have contrary information about, that's a tall order. And I do think it's something that can only take place over time with continued consistent evidence. So when I first started the diet, I went to my neurologist and I told him all about it. And I tried to explain, my daily symptoms have gone away. I already had seen an improvement in my symptoms by moving to a natural environment up a mountain. And I had been a lot worse than I was. I had been in an extremely bad state back in England. But by the time I moved to Spain and had made some changes to my environment, I was already somewhat, I hesitate to say healed, but I had got some level of control over my symptoms at that point. So he was already very skeptical, and he would make sort of snide remarks about how are you doing on the mountain, yeah. And pushing me to take medication, all the while, and using all the scare tactics. And I would say, no, I'm fine. I don't want the medication. I'm doing all right on the mountain. Thank you for asking, and he was very, very skeptical. And then I came in one day and I was talking about the carnivore diet, and he did not like it. I remember him saying, what are you now, an expert in nutrition? And just very sarcastic, and I felt very, very offended. I have to say, we came to blows. Like, we had some potentially you would call it tension. Definitely, we disagreed on my approach to my condition. I found him very patronizing, but I think that that's quite common. I think particularly when you're sitting in front of somebody who's an expert and has some clout, some gravitas, because they've got the title doctor, they're trained. And I had to remind him, I also have the title doctor. Like, I'm not a medical doctor, but I have a PhD. I'm capable of independent thought. I'm literally trained in independent thought. And I am the patient. I am the one in the body experiencing this. So I have some grounds for what I'm saying. I'm capable of doing independent research. I'm capable of reading my body. And you are not an expert in my body. And you are also not in a position to tell me why I have MS or how to cure it, because you don't know, because nobody knows. It's open for exploration. It's open for discussion, because until the medical profession can cure it and say why it's happening, anybody can, take their own approach, and maybe they're right. So he didn't like the fact that I was daring to stand up to him, So that was how things were early on. When I went to see him this year, I hadn't actually seen him for 2 years because I moved away from my region for a year and then returned. So there was a gap of 2 years between my previous meeting with him and the one I had not long ago. And I came back to him, exactly the same, no symptoms, still saying exactly the same stuff, still refusing medication. He seemed different in his attitude this time. I was so surprised in a really nice way. He didn't change his view that I should be on MS medication. That, he was saying, I should go on medication. But he said, I know I can't make you if you don't want to. And he'd never said that before. He acknowledged, he respected the fact that as the patient, I have the right to respectfully refuse the medication being offered to me. And he said to me that he's happy that I have no symptoms. Again, that's the first time he's ever said that. He was almost frustrated with me because I wasn't as sick as he wanted me to be, because my case was flying in the face of his pre-existing beliefs. And even though I had a potential explanation for why that might be, he didn't want to hear it. We didn't get as far as having that conversation this time. He didn't say, so tell me, are you still on that diet? Do you still believe in that diet? He's not interested in, he doesn't want to accept that there could be possibly anything I have done to influence my condition. But he has softened towards me. He has started to respect me a little bit more as a person, as the patient. And I think in that I've seen a process of him potentially not necessarily becoming open to the diet, but just reflecting on his attitude as a medical professional. And that in itself is a good thing. That's a win. So we'll see. Perhaps as the years go on, if I still remain symptom-free. Because he's called me a phenomenon of nature, and he's called me, what was the most recent thing he said? An enigma. So he can't explain why I don't have any symptoms, why I'm absolutely fine. nearly 10 years into an MS diagnosis. He can't explain it. And if that continues, which obviously I hope it does, I would hope that with time he might start to become interested in why physiologically that might be the case.
I think that's really interesting. I mean, your relationship with your doctor is very interesting. At the same time, it's also awesome. You know, you're spreading this awareness, and it seems like you're changing his mind, like, you know, on a gradual basis. Yeah, like you said, like, who knows? Maybe in the next couple of years, you know, the more people knows about carnivore and healing people, then maybe then, like, it's gonna completely change.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to touch back on what you said earlier. When you switched to carnivore, when you tried the carnivore approach, you said, I think like a month, you felt the, I guess, the healing effect. Can you walk me through, like, was that something gradual, or you felt your mood changing? Like, how, you know, like, what was the switch from, like, 1 to 10, or was it like maybe somewhere in the middle?
I'm trying to remember, because this is over 2 years ago now. I remember going through a couple of weeks of maybe feeling a little weird. Nothing terrible, nothing, no discomfort or anything like that, but just ever so slightly weird. And I think that was sugar withdrawal. I think that was when I realized that I had been addicted to sugar, and now I was withdrawing from sugar. That's my theory about the slight weirdness I felt. Like something was absent. Nothing more than that. And then it was just this sense of like the return of clarity and the return of energy and strength. So it was just suddenly I was able to get up in the morning and get out of bed and get on with my day. And suddenly I was able to think clearly. And, you know, my memory had been absolutely dreadful, like to the point where it was distressing. You know, it was somewhat towards a disability to have such a bad memory as I did. You know, I couldn't remember people's faces when I'd met them several times, and it was sometimes like cripplingly embarrassing, you know. And that started to get better. I was able to, like, I don't know, navigate on Google Maps in the car, stuff like that. You know, just my cognitive capacities that enabled me to live my life started to return to me. And that was quick. It didn't feel gradual. Maybe because I have had a gradual return to strength beyond that since then. Like the healing journey has been ongoing, but those first few weeks, maybe because I went up a level from not quite functioning properly to functioning, it was like a noticeable level. Does that make sense? It wasn't that it wasn't up to 10 because I've continued to heal since, but it was from like -1 to 1. So from negative to, okay, now I'm all right. Now I'm in the black. You know what I mean? It was sort of like, I'm out of trouble. I can't really explain it. It's hard to, it was like I went over a threshold into functionability. So that's why it was noticeable, and it was noticeable to people around me as well. I was in a relationship at the time, and my partner hadn't seen me for a few weeks because he was in Morocco, and I went out to Morocco in the first week or two after I started the diet, and he couldn't believe it. I was a different person. So it was noticeable to him. He was really taken aback, actually, by not just by the way I looked, and my energy, but by my cognitive capacities. He was used to somebody who was really quite useless. And suddenly I wasn't so useless anymore, you know. So that was quick. There was a sudden shift of gears. Yeah. But I have continued to heal since and gain more resilience and to heal the emotional side of things. Because for me, you know, as I've said earlier, the impact of chronic illness has been on every aspect of my life, not just my physical capacities, but my work, my relationships, everything, and to be gradually healing those aspects, I also put down to carnivore, because multiple sclerosis has as a symptom depression. That's one of the actual physical symptoms of multiple sclerosis. So it has given me more mental and emotional resilience to be able to start processing the emotional impact of this thing that happened in my life, you know. And 10 years down the line, I don't know if I'm there yet, but I am a completely different person to before I started the diet on every level.
That's really awesome. I mean, you know, to feel that healing like that fast, it's just incredible. And you know, the way you measure them, not just like because of months, and then some people telling you that your partner, right? So you telling you that you're becoming more useful now, right? So I thought it was really I thought it
don't
was a
think he
really
liked
good way
that.
to like, yeah.
It was a bit of a toxic relationship. I think he liked that I wasn't very useful. He could, you know, get away with stuff, and now he couldn't.
Yeah, that's really awesome and funny at the same time. Yeah. So before going carnivore, what was your favorite food? Like, did you like a lot of carbs, or anything like meat combo?
Yeah, that's also a really good question. I would say that I was extremely carb heavy, but it wasn't because I necessarily liked carbs. It was just because with the chronic illness and now living up a mountain, quite isolated, it was just the easiest and the cheapest diet. And that was why I ate a lot of carbs. But I would say that my favorite food probably was something like potatoes. I really love potatoes in all different forms. And I grew potatoes in my garden. But yeah, I had followed a diet called the OMS diet, overcoming multiple sclerosis. So it was a specific diet that was aimed at people with MS, that was purported to help your symptoms or help you to overcome it. And that was a near vegan whole food diet. So it wasn't quite vegan because it included fish, but it was stricter than vegan in that it eliminated all saturated fat. So I wasn't allowed any sunflower oil or coconut, you know, things that normally in a vegan diet you would be able to include were excluded from this diet. And I actually didn't mind that diet. I was following that when I was back in England, when it was quite easy to get a hold of lots of different ingredients, because in England everything's imported and you can get food from all around the world. So I was within that restricted diet. I was playing with flavors and spices and sort of learning about food in a way that I actually found quite enjoyable, but tiring as well. It took a lot of thought and energy, which I didn't really have in cooking stuff. And I would just sometimes be so tired that I would just have toast for dinner or cereal for dinner because I just didn't have the energy to cook. So I got to Spain and I stopped following that diet because it was now harder to get hold of the interesting exotic spices and whatever that I'd been able to work with back in England. But also because I was now living up a mountain and getting to the supermarket was more tiring because I had to go up and down the mountain. And so my diet relapsed back into heavy refined carbs, frozen pizza, pasta, bread, you name it. And it was probably the worst my diet had ever been. And I'd go to the supermarket and I'd reward myself for making that effort by buying like chocolate, cakes, things like that. I had no notion of nutrition, neither conventional nutrition nor carnivore nutrition. I really didn't know anything about nutrition. I feel like I've learned a lot about nutrition since starting the diet. And I learned that even conventional nutrition is actually quite misguided, and particularly with regards to saturated fats and cholesterol. Now it's amazing to me that I followed a diet which eliminated saturated fat. That's amazing to me. I mean, it's the one thing I believe that has made the difference, because with MS, you have what's happening with MS is the immune system is attacking the myelin sheathing in the brain, in the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. And that is a fatty sheathing around the nerve fibers. And that's made of cholesterol. So, are we not, in need of cholesterol if that's what our nervous system is composed of and protected by? And our body manufactures cholesterol, and there's different types of cholesterol and all of this. And I just didn't know any of it. And I didn't realize that fat is important for hormones and for absorbing certain vitamins. Fat's absolutely central to our needs, and carbohydrates are surplus to our needs. We don't need them. They're just a secondary energy source. But if we use fat as our primary energy source, it's really quite a radical change that you experience. It's, you don't get those insulin peaks and crashes. The fact that you can fill up and really stay sustained for longer periods of time, not get sugar cravings, and your energy is much more sustained. And I just feel calmer on the diet, I would say, and more nourished. And like I say, it's had such an impact on my cognitive faculties and my energy levels. But in terms of strength, like the energy I've got isn't crazy running around energy. It's strength to wake up in the morning and get out of bed and go through my day. So it's a different kind of energy. And I put that down to fat. I think fat is very healing and it's anti-inflammatory. And I think that for whatever reason, it was demonized. Saturated fat was demonized, especially not just any saturated fat, but healthy animal fat has been demonized. And it's clearly something that humans need. Yeah. I've gone off on a tangent there, sorry.
I totally agree with that. With the whole fat misinformation, I think one of your video, the most recent one, you talked about it with the fat phobia, right?
Yeah.
I completely agree with that, because it's been for decades that they had that information, and then like demonized and everything, and then it's the complete opposite. Yeah. But looking back at your carnivore journey, like, was there any mistake for you that you made, and like how did you learn from them? Did you had like a I'm forgetting this word, oxalate dumping? What was your experience like? Did you had that? Yeah.
I don't recall having that. People have talked about that, but I don't remember having anything like that. But a mistake I made was not observing intermittent fasting. I remember that I hadn't, early on, I didn't really click that that's actually a huge part of it. That it's not necessarily that you will have a bad time if you don't do it, but it's that if you do it, you're going to have a much, much better time. It really accelerates the healing process. Fasting is extremely, extremely powerful. And I'm not even talking about, going hungry for days. I'm just talking about allowing time to digest the meat and waiting for your body signals that you're actually hungry before you eat again. That is really powerful. So I think a mistake that I made was not paying attention to that. And I have broken the diet at times. I haven't been I know people who have, my friend Diane Ladd, who you may have seen on my channel because I've interviewed her. She is a fellow former MS sufferer who has gone carnivore and, similar to me, no longer has symptoms. I know she never breaks the diet. I admire her so much for that. She's just like, why would I? Because I was so sick before and now I'm not. So why on earth would I ever risk that by breaking the diet? I've not been as good as her in that. I haven't been as strong as her. I have at times fallen off the wagon. But then in doing that, I've realized that why I'm doing it and why I shouldn't do that. So in making the mistake of coming off the diet, or not coming off it, but giving into temptation, or, you know, it would often be when people came to visit or going out socializing, and people would just say, oh, just once, it doesn't matter, have the slice of pizza, you know. And I have had those moments and I have broken the diet, and then I've just felt bloated and, you know, sluggish because of it. And I've always gone back to the diet thinking, thank goodness I've got this as my benchmark. This is my foundation now. This is, you know, I will never go back to my previous understanding of human nutrition. And I will always be kind of using, they're my guidelines. The carnivore guidelines are now fundamentally, I believe it is the correct human nutrition. And yeah, so another mistake has been when I have fallen off the wagon now and then. I've been honest about that on my channel, but I would call that a mistake. You know, that I've allowed myself to do that. But in committing that mistake, I've only relearned why I should not do that.
Yeah, very interesting. I guess I just wanted to add up to that question, like, have you ever had like a moment of doubt, or, you know, because I know you mentioned earlier, you know, your gear shift was very quick, like, you know, you healed quick, like in a month. Was there a moment with you while doing the carnivore you almost gave up, or like, hey, this carnivore seems like it's not working, but it feels like for you it was just like all positive? Did you ever had a moment like of doubt, like, hey, maybe I'll get a heart attack in the future?
No, I have not. I haven't doubted it. No, I've had my moments of weakness, but it's not the same as doubting it. I've never wavered from, oh my God, that was crazy. One minute I had MS, the next minute I didn't anymore. You know, that's pretty powerful. And because it's not just that I had a bodily experience, it's that once I'd had that bodily experience, I then went back and started to try and understand why. And I started to understand that things about nutrition, which I hadn't previously known. And now that I have that information, I don't doubt it, you know, and not just my own experience, but many other carnivores. So many other carnivores report similar results for different conditions. So I haven't ever doubted it as a baseline way forward for everybody, I would say. But I would also say that I don't like to talk to other people in prescriptive ways. I don't like to say to people, you should be carnivore, you know, and I don't like that, because often that's what vegans do, for example, and just tell other people what they should be doing and judging other people for their diet. I don't, even though I do think it is the correct human nutrition, I don't want to go around telling other people what to do. So, but that's not the same as doubting it either. You know, I will be interested in, I will often talk to other people who believe different things about nutrition, whether they're vegan or whatever, and I will hold space for their perspective without, you know, ramming my perspective down their throat. So it's not that I don't believe it, but I think it's important to respect other people's experiences and perspectives that may contradict my own. But in terms of doubting it privately, I don't know. No, I don't.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really like your whole perspective. What does a typical day for you, like your eating, look like? Do you keep it like pretty consistent, or actually, I missed this question What's your favorite food now? Like, do you have a specific meat, or do you like beef or lamb better, or chicken? Yeah, maybe you can walk me through about that.
Lamb all the way. 100%. I absolutely love lamb. And this is actually a new development. When I first went carnivore, I it was all beef because that's what everyone talks about. And I'm in a farming region where there's a lot of it's cows. You know, it's a beef region where I live, Asturias in northern Spain. So that's where it started out. But I've never been the hugest fan of beef. I've always liked lamb more since I was a child. I think just because that's what we had on Sundays, we'd have a roast lamb. And I just always really enjoyed the stronger flavour. And in comparison, beef to me was a little bit more tasteless. Still nice, obviously, but I personally, that's just my preference. And it took me a long time to actually realise that I could literally just consume lamb because of this kind of beef dominance in the carnivore community, and because of the fact that there's so much beef available, good quality beef available here where I live. So it took me like a whole year to realize, hold on, I could just eat what I like best. I could just go and buy lamb. I don't know what took me so long to make that change, but when I did, that's what stopped me from breaking the diet, because I had been tempted to break the diet before, and now I realize it's because I don't find beef quite as delicious personally as lamb. So I was getting a little bit of flavor fatigue at times, and that was what was making me more susceptible to breaking the diet on the occasions that I may have done that. Now it's a whole different thing, because I've discovered where I can buy lamb, how to ask for it, because I'm in a different country. You know, I didn't know like what do you ask for when you buy lamb? Like I didn't want to just have a whole big leg of lamb. What do I do with that? You know, so I've learned what to ask for in the butchers and how to have it, what cuts of lamb and now I'm all good. So, but I will also have bacon and eggs. So that was, I would normally, I mean, I have had like differences over time. Like there was a period of time when I went OMAD, but usually for a kind of typical day, it will be 2 meals a day. And I've gone back to this now, I'm back to 2 meals a day. And it will normally be bacon and eggs in the morning, although I only eat the egg yolks because I've recently discovered that I get a histamine reaction to egg whites. And I think the reason for that is that I feed my chickens corn, you know, processed corn. And I know I shouldn't. I know that that's not something that is good for them to consume or for me to then consume via their eggs. I need to think of a different way to get them, maybe insect protein instead. That's an ongoing thing. But so at the moment, I'm just separating the yolks out and adding them to the bacon. And that's what I'll have in the morning. And then I will have lamb in the afternoon. And this is just a really nice diet. I really enjoy it, actually. It's very satiating.
That's really interesting about the lamb. I haven't had lamb in a while but I've been eating beef like daily. But now I'm thinking of buying lamb.
Yeah, lamb's the
include it
best.
to my diet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you done like something unconventional within the within the carnivore framework? I think an example would be like some people eating the primal way. I think that's still pretty new with the carnivore community, like eating raw meat. Have you done like maybe something different, something unconventional? Have you done something?
Not raw. I haven't. People have suggested it. I didn't know that was called primal actually. But yeah, I've had people suggest raw. Maybe there is nutritional benefit in that, but I feel like, well, if the diet's working for me as it is, why do I need to take that extra step that doesn't actually appeal to me? I would rather have my meat cooked medium rare. You know, if it's going to be rare at all, it would definitely have to be cooked to some degree. I just don't. I don't like raw meat. I don't want it. So no, I haven't gone into that. It's interesting. It's an interesting concept, but I haven't experimented with that. Trying to think anything unusual. I mean, well, I mean, this is stupid, but as part of my healing journey, before I got rid of all my symptoms, I was a heavy marijuana smoker when I still had MS, because it's pain relief, and it was like the only medicine that I had that actually had some effect on my symptoms. And as I became healthier, I realized I don't need this anymore. It's time for me to give up this addiction. It had become an addiction. And so this is, I shouldn't even mention this. This springs to mind because you're asking me for unusual ways to prepare meat. I went through a phase when I was trying to stop smoking marijuana where I'd add it to my ribeyes. But then I quickly realized that's stupid. That's not giving it up. So I stopped doing that. And I've really, this is just to tell you the very good news that I no longer consume marijuana at all. And that is thanks to Carnivore. That's been part of my healing journey. But yeah, there was a little while where I was experimenting with that, and that was the most unusual thing I've ever done with meat. I'm pretty standard as carnivores go.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard that before, but yeah, that's really interesting.
I don't try this at home.
Yeah, I'm yeah, I'm not sure if it's actually called primal, but I think that was the first word that came up to my mind. It's like, I think it's called primal. But yeah. What is the hardest thing about like being carnivore? I know you mentioned earlier about social gatherings and also I think some cravings, that getting tempted to sin. I think like for me, like social gatherings, travel, and the cravings in the beginning. What's the hardest thing for you?
I would say two things. One, the expense. At the moment, meat is very expensive, and I've struggled with that. But I'm finding ways to reduce the expense, which to me would be changing my lifestyle to have a homesteading lifestyle where I can raise my own animals. So that is a long-term project that is in process for me, trying to achieve that so that it's much more economically viable. I know that you are spending more on meat, but you're not spending money on snack foods and processed foods, and so that and you're eating fewer times a day, and it lasts longer. So I know that there's costs. The costs are offset by those elements of the diet, but it's still expensive. It's more expensive than being vegan and just going to the supermarket and buying a pack of rice and some onions. It's definitely more expensive. So that I struggle with, and that's the fault of the industry, and the way we're living. So it's not that meat is wrong because it's more expensive. It's just an unfortunate situation that that we have. But the other thing about the diet that I find difficult is animal rights. I think factory farming is absolutely horrific. I think vegans are completely right about that. I wish carnivores and vegans could band together against factory farming. I think carnivores would probably be willing to do that with vegans, but I don't see that happening the other way around. And that's a shame, because we all feel the same about that. And carnivores don't want animals to suffer. I think the difference is carnivores accept on a moral level, on a spiritual level, perhaps, that it's not immoral for animals to eat each other. It's just part of the world, the way the world is. It's the natural order. I think carnivores accept it as a natural order, whereas vegans don't accept it as being necessary or desirable. So but we are all on the same page about animal suffering. And so that's something I find hard, that, going to get meat that you can afford often means going to get meat which has involved the horrible suffering of animals. And, you know, the meat that is most ethical will often cost even more. So that's another reason why it's really important to me to try and raise my own animals so that I know how they've been treated. And it's also more economically viable. Both things would be addressed by that change in my lifestyle. So that's what I'm trying to do as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I agree with all that. Another question from a fellow carnivore. I think you mentioned this in your one of your videos. I think getting rid of your wireless internet, your Wi-Fi in your house, like help you with your MS. Like, yeah, I was wondering how your Wi-Fi was like a big issue for you. Like, and how did it? I guess like how did it change, improve your MS? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that question, because it's something that lots of people aren't open to hearing about. You know, you can take it or leave it, believe it or not, but I experienced an upturn in my symptoms when I was back in England and I was at my most ill, and I was seriously ill. You know, I was completely sofa bound, on my hands and knees in the shower. I had no energy. I had nausea all day long, aches and pains, and I couldn't look at lights. I couldn't string sentences together. This was the most ill that I ever was with MS, the most ill I'd ever been in my whole life. I experienced my first upturn in symptoms when I discovered, quite by accident almost, that I had become sensitive to Wi-Fi and smartphones. But I realized that because when I experimented with turning off my router and putting my phone on airplane mode, suddenly I was getting a better night's sleep. I was much more I was able to look at lights again, and, you know, everything just kind of, it was like a switch. And that was what gave me enough. But the thing is, it wasn't so much that I gained strength from that. It's just that I explained it to somebody else. It was more like the symptoms were turned down, rather than when I started Carnivore, it was like the strength returned. But when I discovered about the Wi-Fi, it was more like just the noise of the symptoms was turned down a little bit, enough to give me the clarity or the mental strength to be able to get out of England and move up a mountain in Spain. You know, I wouldn't have been able to do that if that hadn't happened. And that was one of my motivations for moving up a mountain when I discovered that. So that has also been a consistent thing. You know, it's important to note that when you have MS, you do become sensitive to everything to an extreme degree, whether that's heat or stress or lights. And I would include in that Wi-Fi, but I would assume that a lot of people don't realize that, but I would guess that they are without knowing it, and perhaps they've never experimented with it. And I therefore think that it's harmful to everybody, but I don't know to what extent. You know, I don't know if it's just an environmental stressor that we don't know, we don't realize about it. It's invisible. But I became aware of it and I was impacted by it. Now that I have my strength back, I am able to tolerate it more. So it's just really interesting that I just by having MS, by becoming structurally weakened and becoming much more sensitive to environmental stresses, I discovered that that was one of the environmental stresses that surrounds us. There are many. So I do think that it is there putting stress on every single person, but I don't think it has the same impact on everybody, because people, you know, a healthy person isn't necessarily going to be as affected by it as somebody who's sick. But I do think that it's something, and something we don't think about, something we don't talk about, that people often dismiss as conspiracy theory, but that really is just like low-level radiation around us all the time. And I don't think that can be healthy. So I do live in the country now. I will never live in the city again because of that. However, I am able to tolerate more of it now. I would never have a router in my house, and I always switch my phone off overnight. I always try and eliminate my exposure overnight. So I have sort of health rules that I follow, but I do, you know, I do go into the city. I don't worry about that, you know, and I do, you know, I'd go to a gathering where everybody has their mobile phone and there's a router. I'd go there, I'd spend time there. But when I go home, I want to know that there's an environment which is free of that and which I'm in control of that. And I'm living in the countryside. So yeah, I will stand by that till the day I die. That was my experience. I don't know what you think about that. What do you think about that?
I think it's very interesting. I've never heard of it, you know, relating to the Wi-Fi. I did hear some other thoughts about that, but I think it's relating to, you know, one of the carnivore rule, which is like follow your body signals. I think what you're doing is pretty much like following your body signals because you're feeling a lot better, you know, removing the Wi-Fi. So yeah, I think that's that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump into this next question. If you had to describe the impact of carnivore in your life, what one word would you describe it and why?
Powerful. Because, you know, lots of words jumped into my mind. Healing, healing and powerful went into my mind, but powerful because it put me back in control of my life. It put me back in control of my body. It gave my body power and energy and gave me agency back. I was helpless in the face of this chronic illness that just demolished my life as I knew it. And I was sort of trying to crawl out from underneath it for so many years by moving up the mountain and just trying to rebuild my life. And carnivore came along and it was like, here you go, you can start actually rebuilding your life. You know, like now I can, it's something I do fairly often. Like I live in the country, so I have a fireplace. So I get log deliveries every winter, big log deliveries on the truck. And often they will just dump the logs outside your house and you have to move the logs to a sheltered place yourself. So when I first moved up the mountain, when I used to get log deliveries on a big tractor, I would just be sitting staring at this huge log pile thinking, I can't do that. I can't move those logs, you know, and I would have to get help and, you know, bit by bit move the logs to a sheltered place. In the past year, I've had 2 different log deliveries and I've just thought, oh, well, no one else is going to move them. I better move them, and just got stuck in and moved an entire huge pile of logs myself into the woodshed or wherever, you know, by myself with no impact afterwards, which is a big job, even if you are healthy. But when you have MS, it's not only, well, it's an impossible task with MS, first of all, but even if you attempted it, you would have a massive impact that would last for days or weeks afterwards. And so you wouldn't be advised to, it wouldn't be advisable to do it. And it's just amazing to feel like, yeah, I can do that. I do it. And I feel powerful when I do that. That's why powerful, you know, I feel strong. I feel capable. I'm sick of being, I got so tired of being that weak, helpless person that nobody understood. Nobody understood what this illness was doing to me, what it had taken from me, the person that I had previously been. And you know, I'd moved to a new country, meeting all these new people, and they didn't really know me because they knew the me that was weakened by MS, and they thought were just useless and lazy. You know, it's often the assumption people jump to. That was how things was. And now I'm powerful again. I'm back in control. I'm in the driving seat. I'm moving log piles by myself. I'm ripping stinging nettles out of my garden every day for hours. And like, you know, that's quite tough gardening work, you know, digging down and ripping out big, thick roots. And I'm happy to do that every single day. It gives me so much joy. And it's that feeling of power. It's powerful. Yeah.
That's so awesome. Yeah, much big changes. Like, yeah, I could see. Yeah, very powerful. Um, Knowing what you know now about carnivore and nutrition, if you can give a an advice to someone just starting with carnivore, right? Like, or maybe they have symptoms of MS, but like I would say like extreme fatigue or maybe mood changes, but they don't know because it's early on. You know, for someone who feels maybe they're hopeless, early signs, what suggestion would you give them?
I think probably I would suggest to try it for 30 days rather than worry about, oh my God, I've got to never eat anything again except meat, because that's for many people quite a burden. You know, just try it for 30 days, because I think if in those 30 days you feel the difference, then you are going to be more encouraged very naturally to want to continue. I mean, maybe not everybody would feel an improvement so quickly. I know some people haven't, but that's what the advice I'd give at the beginning. Just give it a month. Just see, experiment. Don't take it as dogma. Don't take it as something you necessarily have to do for the rest of your life, but just give it a go. Or why not give it a go? Because I don't want to encourage people to do things if they're uncomfortable with that. But that's the advice I'd give is try it. But the other piece of advice I'd give is if you are willing to try it, don't forget to do the intermittent fasting element, because that's, you know, that shouldn't be overlooked. It's a really powerful part of it.
That's great advice. Yeah, I think it's awesome. Future outlook question: how do you see carnivore movement? I guess in the next maybe 5 to 10 years. Where do you see the carnivore lifestyle going? Like positive and negative. Negative would be like you know, I think you mentioned this earlier with the fat misinformation, right? Or it could be some censorship. It could be the like how you want to lower your expenses, beef prices going up, and then at the same time, on the positive side, more people healing, more people joining community, wanted to learn more about carnivore, want to hear more testimonials. Yeah, how do you see carnivore in the next couple of years?
Yeah, well, the first thing I thought was, gosh, you know, I think we've got a battle to fight, because the way I see the world is there's a push for veganism, and there's like an anti-meat push, and it seems to be coming from top down. And there's, you know, and that's to do with environmental dogma. I don't know. I see those patterns developing, and I just think that we are being encouraged away from meat. There's obviously the World Health Organization guidelines as well. There's just a lot of messaging in the way of do not eat meat. Red meat will kill you. Red meat is bad for you. Red meat is unethical, you know, and I don't feel comfortable with that. You know, just as on a personal level, it's like I've just started a new diet, it's got me my health back, and now I'm starting to feel like the bad guy. You know, I sort of feel like I'm on the wrong side of the law almost, and that's the way I see it going. And also I think that we're going to be encouraged to consume like lab grown meat, potentially even insects. Like there's just worrying things. Maybe it won't go that way. Maybe it's just talk on the internet. I don't know, but I worry. I would say that I have that concern that meat is going to become more and more regulated and, dare I say it, sort of outlawed almost. And that trend, does concern me. Like, are we going to have to fight for our right to eat the proper human diet? Let's hope not. Let's hope not, because censorship is a worry as well. Like you mentioned censorship, and I have a YouTube channel. You have a YouTube, you know how it is. You can't make claims that are unsubstantiated. You have to, and of course, a lot of carnivores are making medical claims about their own bodies, sharing their experiences. And like, does that start to get policed in this world? Is that starting to come on the wrong side of YouTube censorship laws? I don't feel like we're in the free world that we once were. The other thing is homesteading is becoming more regulated. Where I live in Spain, currently chickens are not allowed to be free range. They have to be cooped up because of avian flu. And the same is true of pigs. And there's just all these kind of talks of viruses. And, it's so easy to find yourself being called a conspiracy theorist by talking about your simple concerns about the world that we live in. So it's very difficult to say anything, and I'm very, very aware of that. I actually studied in my PhD the nature of conspiracy theory narratives. It was part of my PhD. So I like to tell people, look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy theory theorist. I've got a PhD in conspiracy theory. You can't call me a conspiracy theorist. But it's true. Like you even just talking about our right to eat meat now, or our right to have backyard chickens, it's becoming very tricky. I feel like the goalposts are always moving, and our choices are becoming more loaded and more controversial, just making choices that would be conducive to optimal human health. Whether that's resisting interventions, medical interventions, or choosing alternative approaches, everything's just suddenly much more tricky. You don't know what territory you're in. And so that is something that concerns me about the diet, 100%. Positive, there are more and more people doing the diet and more people who are experiencing positive results. That can only be positive. I mean, look at Dave Mack's channel. You must have seen Dave Mack's channel. All of his amazing testimonies, like, that can't be ignored. That's a data set. That's evidence. And the more of that we can accumulate now, while we still have the freedom to do that online, the stronger position we're in to be able to fight for our right in the face of potential restrictions or censorship. So I see that as a massive positive, that so many people are trying the diet. I find that also, like, I've never had any doubt in regards to my own choice to go carnivore, but it's also just really amazing to see so many other people experiencing similar things. It does just make you feel more righteous in promoting the diet, getting behind the diet, because it's not just that, oh, this worked for me. It's like, look, this is working for so many people. So yeah, strength in numbers, I think, is a big positive. And I just see that that's spreading more and more and more, because it's like, there's influencers like Russell Brand that are talking about it. Like, Russell Brand is a vegan, or was a vegan, but he's done some interviews where he's actually talked about the carnivore diet and been open to the carnivore diet, and had, that's been a topic he has been willing to explore. So when you get big influencers like that, that's also really positive, who are willing to say things that are sort of, because it's in the realm of politically incorrect, because of animal rights, because of environmentalism. It's become something controversial. But there are brave people out there at the moment. There are big influencers out there within the carnivore community and beyond, who I think are becoming more and more open to it and are willing to put themselves out there. So I see that as a positive. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I very much agree with what you said about the negative. I feel like it's very concerning, about the patterns, the whole misinformation, and also the pharma not liking it. They might do
Mm.
something in the back, and also
Yeah.
the with the positive outlook, like more people, like the bigger the influencer, the better, because more
Mm.
people are relating, and
Mm.
they're seeing the effect, and it can't be ignored. So
Mm.
I thought that was really how you put it together was excellent. Rebecca, if people want to reach out or connect with you, what is the best place to reach you?
Well, my YouTube channel, I'm not really on social media apart from my YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel, but my email address is on in my channel info. So I really like it when people reach out by email, and obviously I like it when people comment on my videos and reach out via my videos as well. That's really nice. I really love the little community around my channel. It's been very supportive and very open-minded, and just been a big part of my experience on the diet. So yeah, definitely visit my YouTube channel. And if you want to reach out by email, you're more than welcome.
That's excellent. I'm going to make sure to post all of them in the description. Rebecca, thank you so much again for joining me today. I really enjoyed hearing your story and learning about your carnivore journey. I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.